you are all doing well. Thank you so much for joining me here today, where we're going to talk about books and we're going to make a treat to go with our reading. So I'm finishing up the manga classics version of the stories of Edgar Allan Poe. As we all know, he is one of my favorite authors. The Raven is one of my favorite poems. I've saved that for last. But before I settled down to read, I wanted to make something nice to go along with my final story in the book, and so I thought I would make some pumpkin spice hot chocolate. So I am going to just put my hair up so it doesn't end up in my drink. I'll show you what we're going to use. To make the chocolate part of the hot cocoa, we're going to use a combination of chocolate, and I got a dark chocolate that's only got 2 grams of sugar in it because I want to cut back on sugar. I've also got some cocoa powder. I took a bar of chocolate, I cut it up into smaller pieces, but I am only using about an ounce, a little over an ounce for this one. The cocoa powder, I'm going to use about 3/4 of a teaspoon. The recipe called for a combination of whipping cream and milk. I've opted to replace both of those with oat milk, so I'm going to use about 4 ounces of the oat milk. I have a can of organic pumpkin puree. There was a big to-do about using pumpkin puree, not using pumpkin pie filling. For what I can tell, basically the difference is pumpkin pie filling already has spices in it. You don't want the one with spices in it already, because we're going to put in our own spices. So I've got pumpkin pie spice, and I have ground nutmeg. Recipe also calls for cinnamon. I already have that in there. Calls for whipping cream to go on top. You can do this or not do this, whatever you want. Just because it's faster for me, I've got a non-dairy, it's actually almond milk, whipped topping. I've got a small measuring cup. I have measuring spoons. I have the 2-cup measuring cup that the oat milk is already in. I am going to first warm the oat milk. The oat milk is warming. I have a 1/4 teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice and a pinch, basically, of nutmeg in this little cup here. Right now I need about a 1/2 teaspoon of cocoa powder. And I'm going to add that right in there. I have a teaspoon of the pumpkin puree on the side. What I'm going to do now is grab a fork, because I don't have a whisk here and I didn't want to buy a whisk. And I'm going to start adding the chocolate to the oat milk and just stirring it to dissolve it in there. And at any point, if I need to, I can always go back and heat up the oat milk a little more. You can tell looking at the side that it's melting, so I'm going to add the rest of it. And I'm going to stir. At this point, I'm also going to stir in the cocoa and the spices. And because if I was using the whisk, I'd be whisking a little faster. I'm going to increase the speed there. Looks like it's melting well. I'm going to give it another little zap in the microwave. So that is pretty smooth. It's very chocolatey. I am going to actually, I think, incorporate a little more of the oat milk, because that's just a little too strong a chocolate flavor for me. So I heated another ounce or so of oat milk. I'm going to stir that in. If you like your hot cocoa sweeter, you don't want to make it with a dark chocolate with very little sugar in it like I did. But I like that flavor now. So, for the fun part, we are going to stir in about a teaspoon of the pumpkin puree. I'm going to go a little more than just a teaspoon because I want a really pumpkin-y flavor. And I'm going to go back to the fork to kind of get it to incorporate better. Some fast stirring. I don't see any pumpkin left in there. Because I'm added additional oat milk, I'm going to add a little spritz of the nutmeg, a little spritz of the pumpkin pie spice. Mix again. I think maybe we'll stir in just a little more pumpkin. I don't want to overdo the pumpkin, but I don't want to do too little. So I'm going to go with another good spoonful. Let's give it a taste. Still chocolatey, a little pumpkin-y. I think we'll call that good. So I have a Halloween cup. I'm going to stir in my cocoa. It's a thick cocoa, which is nice. It's very smooth and velvety too. Can't say I've had a lot of velvety cocoa in my life, so that's a nice feature of it as well. One thing I like is a lot of whipped topping, so I'm gonna actually do that up good. Gonna put a sprinkle of nutmeg. A little sprinkle of cocoa. I will get Frankenstein's monster to help me clean up down here, and then we will get some reading done.